What a video in January where somebody talks about movies and shows they miss. You never see those. And it's funny because it's not like these videos do like great numbers or anything. In fact, they're usually forgotten pretty quick. But I don't know. I think we just like to do them. YouTubers that see a lot of movies and shows, but don't get to talk about everything, whatever time restrictions or just other things get in the way. So this is a quick sum up of just my reviews and thoughts on some movies and shows that came out in 2024 that I didn't get a chance to get to. Fallout. Okay, so this is a show I have to really emphasize. I do not know anything about the video game. I know it's a very popular series. If you just show me someone like in a blue jumpsuit, I know what that is, but I mean, anything outside of that, I really don't know. So it was cool going into this completely blind outside of that. And I also had a big fear that between this and Last of Us and then Borderlands, there are going to be too many apocalyptic video game adaptations out there. But Last of Us was pretty good. Borderlands was not very good, so at least that kind of separates it from everything else. And then this one I also thought was really, really good and had enough of a clear identity that I wouldn't confuse it for something like Borderlands or Last of Us. And it's one of those shows where it's not the most difficult to figure out, but it's also not banking much on any kind of mystery or surprises or anything like that. Like, there are a couple, but they're not that surprising, but that's not really why you watch it. You watch it for how cool this world is, for the different characters that survive in this world. I like the contrast of the people in the shelter versus the people above the shelter in the above world, in the apocalypse and everything. And I like the different ways they handle things, and I like that it isn't something where, well, one way is clearly right. And no, both worlds have different ways of being correct and being wrong. And I like that. I was surprised how much I enjoyed every time it cut back to the shelter, because the main character leaves and you think, I mean, after a pretty good intro, like a really good, I mean, not just the intro of the show, but just the whole first episode, I thought was really good at sucking you in and just, you want to follow this character and figure out what this world is like above the shelter. But I was surprised I was not annoyed every time I cut back to the shelter, that I actually like seeing these people who do not know how to treat folks from the world above, and they're trying to be very self-righteous, and they're trying to figure out what's the proper thing to do and don't just do what kind of obviously needs to be done a lot of the times. But that's also kind of a struggle I feel like a lot of people would have as well. But on top of that, everything I think most people have said. The action is great. The acting is great. It has a wonderful sense of humor. Again, by the time I got to the ending, that was the only thing I thought. The ending could have a little bit more of an oomph to it. It just went the route I thought it was gonna go. And again, they were playing some things like it was supposed to be a big surprise. I'm like, I mean, I wasn't that surprised. But again, I don't think a ton was banking on that. But for a show where it was very good at revealing what this world was like and what some characters would do and wouldn't do, I thought the ending could have a little bit more of a punch. But on top of that, the gore effects, or just the effects in general, are really, really well done. I can't believe people were looking at like the metal suits and being like, oh, it looks like cosplay. Like, good, it looks like something that's really there. I'm so sick of CG that's not needed. And I feel like this is a show where for the most part they would use CG only when it was needed. And for the rest of the time they would use practical effects for where it made sense. I don't know how you're gonna do no nose on a guy. I heard they did something with the nose that was a little different too. The guy didn't have a nose, but I don't know, maybe like I said, it came out a while ago, even though it's only a year, but it's early in the year, so that was a while ago for me, the long, long ago. So I really enjoy the show. If you have not played Fallout, you don't need to. I did not play it, and I had a great time with it. I mean, chances are you've already seen it and formed your opinion on it, but yeah, I had a good time with it. Looking forward to Season 2. Speaking of Season 2, let's talk about Arcane Season 2, which is all there's going to be, apparently. That is to say, if they do another version of this show, it's not going to be with the same characters. It could be in the same universe, but it's not going to be with the same people. And Arcane came out just before Netflix announced that they were going to do a lot of cutbacks to their animated shows and animated movies. And so everyone thought that was it for Arcane. We weren't going to get any more, and adore the first season of Arcane. I mean, it's one of the most amazing things I've seen. I mean, I got the same feeling when I saw, like, Batman, the animated series, or Avatar, The Last Airbender. Like, whoa, you do not see animated shows like this. Like, this is really something of a marvel, especially from America, I feel like. And but granted, there is a lot more experimentation. There is a lot more happening in America with animation, which is great. I think this is proof of that. But then you see Netflix cut down the budget, so the fact that we were getting another season at all was nice, but I feel like everyone had the same thought. I feel like it can't just be me that this should have been 3 seasons, and for a series that really feels like it had to suddenly squish 2 seasons into 1 season. Season 1 clearly had time to expand and grow and everything, and then season 2 feels like 2 seasons squished together. They did a really good job. It is not a show where, or it's not a season where I was watching it thinking, boy, they really had to cut a lot of stuff and move a lot of things around, until maybe the second to last episode. That's when I started to see, okay, well, what's the major battle in this gonna be? And when you start to see it, and when you start to see where some of the characters are falling into place, I did definitely go, yeah, this needed 1 more season, because everything does work, and that is not, that's what's so surprising. I really thought that too many things were going to be left out or chopped down, and it just wasn't going to work out. And it does work, but it could have been phenomenal. I get the feeling in the last episode, I would probably be like teary-eyed watching some of those scenes if they had another season to really expand on some of this, particularly the big threat that they're supposed to go against in the last few episodes. I really thought, yeah, it's there, it's hinted at, but you needed time to explore this more, because there's a lot of very complex, interesting ideas going on here, and how to really tie that into, this is a threat, an interesting concept, an interesting threat to go up against, and you want to be on their side. Or even if you want to be like confused, not knowing who to root for, you really want to be invested one way or another. And I was invested enough where I feel like if there was more time, I could have really been sucked into this big time. But there's still moments that did make me a little teary-eyed. There's one moment where, sorry, my cat just came in. Say hi, Chaplin. There he is. Sorry, he rubs up against the tripod sometimes, so I didn't want to do that, but you go over there now. Okay. But there's one moment that, without going too much into spoilers, where Jinx is helping people escape from a prison. And when she gets there, the reaction was really, really powerful to me. And it did not need like any dialogue, or very, very little. And I love the visual storytelling of this show. In fact, what I was really impressed by is, I mean, I feel like this has to be the case. There's moments where the style changes and it goes a lot more simple and the animation changes. And I feel like that has to be a budget cut, again, with Netflix cutting the animation, but they work with it so brilliantly. I mean, they just utilize it in such a smart way, because the show already has a style that is very much its own, but it does also change up a little bit. So there's moments where suddenly something might be a little bit more like crayon drawings, or something might be a little bit more graphic novel or something. It might be more sketchy and stuff, but the way they utilize it and the way they tie it into, no, this was always what we were going to do kind of thing. Like, I could kind of believe either, but I really do think it was probably Netflix cutting the budget would be my assumption, but they just worked it in so phenomenally. I mean, just in a beautiful, artistically pleasing way that also really served the story. It didn't bother me at all. And then I also think some of the characters they're setting up in the first season, a lot of them do get payoffs, and a lot of them do get good moments. Sometimes they even get full episodes, but again, for a 2-season show, it is weird that suddenly, like, oh, this character that got, you know, maybe collected together maybe 10 minutes of screen time in the first season, suddenly we'll have a whole episode kind of thing. Well, that seems kind of out of nowhere. And again, I feel like that's got to be a budget cut thing, or the fact that it was cut down to 2 seasons. I could be wrong. If that is the case, then that is a legit problem with season 2. That's something they should have planned out a little bit more, and they should have insisted on a season 3, but I get the feeling they were squished into this. And for being squished into this setup, I thought they pulled it off really, really well. I do feel bad that I couldn't, like, sing its praises all the way through. Like, this is one of the great shows, like one of the great animated shows, but I don't know. It's if I had to give it like a star rating, I probably like, if it had 3 seasons, I feel like I would give it 4 out of 4 stars. But because it's, 2 seasons, I'd probably give it a very, very high 3.5 stars. Like it's almost perfect. Like, I don't know. It's a pretty nice compliment you can give something. It's almost perfect. But for what it set up originally and where it was gonna go, kind of like, there's some shows like this where it has to be perfection in order to, be one of the great shows. There's some shows you can say, well, that's a great show, but there's problems with it. Where this one started so strong and promised so much, like it had to be perfect. It's kind of like Game of Thrones or Lost. You have to end on a perfect note. But this one still ends on a really, really good note. It's still really, really well done. The animation is just still mind-blowing. The world is fantastic. I do wish there was another season where we could see more of these characters get kind of proper finales and proper arcs, but the arcs work just well enough and the endings work just well enough. But on top of that, the incredible animation, the incredible world, good twists and surprises in this. There were moments where I legit did not know a certain character was going to do something or surprise someone else or turn around or whatever. So yeah, there were a lot of surprises like that I'm usually pretty good at seeing. So those really surprised me too. So really, really loved it. I wish it was perfection, which I know is demanding a lot, but I feel like the show could have done it if Netflix followed through on what the first season was promising. They gave them the budget and the time to follow through, but still very, very well done. So The Batman as a movie, I really, really enjoyed. Again, it's one of those that I didn't quite see as perfect, but I thought was really, really good. I'm excited to see more of this take on Gotham City. And when I saw the preview for the Penguin, I said, well, I don't need this show, but all right, it might be interesting. He was fun in the movie. I wouldn't mind knowing more about him. I tried the first episode, and it was fine, but I didn't think I was going to get into it. My biggest issue was that it just seemed like any other mob show. Even the style of the show didn't really seem like that much in the Batman universe, the way it was shot, the city itself and everything. Even some of the villains sometimes, it just felt like any other mob show. Every once in a while they sprinkle in a little bit of something that's a little Batman-ish, which I don't mind. I don't mind something that's a little different, but it wasn't adding anything that new, I thought, so I stopped watching it. And everyone was telling me, no, man, it gets good. It gets better. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. So, all right. So I sat down and kept watching it, especially because people said, oh, the finale. Oh, did you see, like, when the finale happened? Did you see the finale of Penguin? Wasn't it so good? Wasn't it so good? So I finally decided, okay, let me see if this gets better. So without going too much into spoilers, the first 2 or 3 episodes, again, I was just very again, it's well done, it's well put together, it's well handled, but just nothing that new, nothing that was really like influential to me or like sparking this excitement I had that goes, ooh, like here's new territory. It was all stuff I've seen before. But then kind of the lead villain gets a little bit more focus and we go into her backstory. The episode where we go into her backstory was the first one where I said, okay, this is kind of interesting. This is, I don't know if I can say it's new, but it was shown in kind of a new way, or at least an interesting enough way, I should say. And then as the show kept going, there were always things that I kind of, squinted my eye at and went, would this happen in this world? I don't know, some of these choices. But it was keeping my interest. And the main thing that surprised me about this, again, without going too much into spoilers, is that they really set up the Penguin is a certain type of character, and as the show keeps going, it reveals something else, and that was very refreshing to see. Because I feel like, yes, with a lot of mobsters in movies and shows, something like The Sopranos or Goodfellas or something, yes, they can surprise you, but you have them figured out pretty early on, and I really thought that's what this was going to be. But the more you find out about him, particularly his connection with his mother and the people around him, his connection to the people around him and how he acts around them, and what he'll do, what he'll hold on to that's the same, what he'll change, that's where the show gets really interesting. And by the time it got to the ending, to the last episode, again, no spoilers, there was something in the first episode that I said, you know what? If this show wants to keep me, if this show really wants to say, we're going to do something different it should make this one choice. I won't say what it is, but they don't do it in the first episode. And I said, all right, well, it's still fine, but I feel like if they really want me to go, whoa, this is unlike, any other mob show I've seen, it would make this choice. And they do it in the last episode, which really surprised me. And when I got there, I said, okay, I see why you did this. I see why you did here and not the first episode. Again, I won't go into spoilers, but it was something where when you see everything play out, I was kind of nodding like, all right, you played the long game here. And it's not even like it started off bad. It started off perfectly fine and only got better and better. It took a bit, but it really did get there. And if you're someone that starts this show and says, this is a good show, I'm going to like this show, agree, you're going to love it. It's going to only get better. If you start watching it and you think it's like every other mob show you've seen, a lot of it is, but there are new elements thrown in as it keeps going, and most of it is around him. They really do a good job making it look like he's one thing, and then slowly you peel away more, and it's not like, oh, he becomes, like a sympathetic, kind, because you've seen that in a million other mobster movies, but it's also not something, well, he's just a monster, kind of thing. He will make choices that genuinely surprise you. They surprised me. And at the same time, by the time I got to the end, I said, okay, I think I understand why he made these choices, or at the very least, how strange his mind is, what's going on in his head, that I say, okay, these clearly aren't, the right choices or anything, but I see why he's doing it. The show did a good enough job building him up and showing his backstory and showing how his mind works that when it got to the end where he's doing stuff that surprises you, I don't say that's out of character. I say, okay, that does make sense. I am seeing what kind of person this is now. And as it keeps going, it does become more of a character study, which is what most mob shows should be. Most mob movies should be. I mean, the best ones really should be. But this one still managed to surprise me quite a bit. So, yes, there's not going to be as many Batman villains and, crime fighting and stuff like that in there. And there are a lot of elements that, like I said, you might kind of call BS on in terms of like what some of these mobsters agree to and who they trust and things like that. But at the same time, I did really enjoy it more and more, and it did surprise me as it kept going. So I do recommend if you watch the first episode and go to it, keep going. It turns out something pretty great. The Substance, I literally just saw a few days ago. I didn't see it when it came out on the big screen, and it is one of those movies where I didn't stay away from it. I did want to see it, but there's just too much going on. But a lot of the criticisms I was hearing, mostly pro, but they were pointing out stuff that I said, all right, I feel like I've already seen this movie. And from a writing standpoint, yes, there's nothing really that new. You've seen this kind of story in a lot of types of sci-fi shows, movies, short stories, books, novels, all that stuff. So this is really nothing that new, but the way it's presented is very, very fun. And the one thing I was afraid of, which sometimes was a problem, is that the director has this great visual style that is clearly taking a lot from Kubrick, and that's fine. I mean, I feel like if you want to be worth your salt visually, I mean, to some extent you should take from Kubrick, to some extent you should take from Orson Welles, you should take from some of these people, but there are literally shots that are directly impossible not to think of Kubrick. Even if you don't know who Stanley Kubrick is, you'll be like, oh, that carpet kind of looks like The Shining. Oh, that shot looks like when Jack Nicholson was knocking against, the door in The Shining. Like, particularly from The Shining, I feel, oh, that bathroom kind of looks like 2001. It's inescapable, even if you have no idea who the director is, and that could be really distracting. But the reason I bring that up is because when this director's visual style gets away from that, I shouldn't say gets too much away. It definitely has a huge amount of that in there, but when she starts to have like her own unique style, I was liking it a lot more, and that is what this movie thrives on. Like the story is good, and the characters and the writing, everything are good, and they're very exaggerated and played up. I'm forgetting his name. Dennis Quaid is just hamming it up like crazy in this, and this is one of those worlds where you'll have somebody like that's going to be in a new show, or somebody's in a show, she's in this workout show. And the workout show looks really weird, and it's not really supposed to be, this is a show that would really run today. It's more of an exaggerated, over-the-top satire of it, to a point where, I think most people know the synopsis, where it's this, I don't even think it's an actress. Maybe it's yeah, it's gotta be an actress, because she has the star on the Walk of Fame. She's getting older, so she gets this stuff that creates a different version of her, and when this newer, younger version gets picked up to replace her in the show. They don't know they're replacing her with the same person, but they are. This big billboard pops up with just her on the billboard. It just says new show. It doesn't say what it is or where to watch it or anything like that. That's the kind of world this lives in. I like those kind of worlds. Sometimes they can be a little much. I feel like I'm on the cusp of not liking them. Like, maybe 3 more I can do, and then you have to really, really think of something else to make these worlds and these ideas, really stand out a little bit more. But I do still like them now. Like I said, it's like my patience is almost running thin for them, but they're not. And again, some good visual storytelling. The way the movie opens and closes, again, it's very obvious, but it's so simple and it's so effective. These are just visuals I'm not going to forget. The effects are very, very well done, especially the gore effects and the, I don't even know what you call it. It's body horror, I guess, sometimes like monster effects too. And I heard a lot of people saying, man, what do you think of it just as a body horror film? And again, I hadn't seen it yet, so I'm watching this movie mainly thinking, I can see how people would, cringe watching this, but, I've seen far worse. They're saving it just for the last, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. With that said, it is also a movie that goes on a little too long. It's very, 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 very easy to see what the idea of the movie is, but again, you could argue it's presenting an attitude and experience to it, and it does that very, very well. But I feel like in the last 15, 20 minutes, even though the effects are great and it looks awesome, it looks beautifully gross and everything, you could have trimmed it a lot. I really feel like it did overstay its welcome a little bit, but then it kind of leads to some great effects and a great final shot, and I did really enjoy it. And I really think it's one of those movies where when you get films that repeat something that, yes, you've seen before, but do it in such a new, fun way, you do kind of get that spark again of I know this isn't anything new, but they're shooting it and telling it in a way that feels kind of new. And it's not even with tricks that are that new. It's just a unique style, a unique combination of different techniques and styles that are really, really fun. So yeah, I definitely, if you're a fan of, I don't want to say body horror, but yes, they are right. That element is certainly very prominent in there. But if you're a fan of not only, yeah, sure, body horror, but very much like a Jekyll and Hyde type story, which I think this film very much is very, very clever at blurring the line at. You don't know if when this younger person takes over, if it is a different personality or if it's just her, because she gets this note that says, remember, you are number one. And anytime she calls up and says, my younger version is doing that, blah, 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 or the younger version comes up, my older version is doing that, blah, 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 the person on the other end always says, there is no other version. It is you. And I love that, because this can either be they're trying to trick this person, no, you're the one that's crazy, even though maybe it really is 2 different people, or they really are creating different personalities just based on how, not only how they look, but how the rest of the world treats them. Both are very, very possible, and both are so fascinating and so interesting. I think that's the other angle, or the other element of this that makes it so intriguing. So yes, it is a good movie. Everybody's right, it's really good. The critiques are also right, the few things that are a little off about it, but yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. I'm looking forward to seeing what else this director does. Transformers 1. Okay, so a lot of people have wanted me to see this movie. With Transformers in general, it's funny, I've covered a lot of the movies in one way or another. Sometimes it's almost like a parody in a way that I'm not covering them, but I'm covering them at the same time. It's complicated, it's weird. But anyway, everyone said this is by far the best Transformers movie. I mean, just even if you don't know what Transformers is, this is just a good movie in general. And so there's a lot of hype around it, even though I know it didn't do very well in theaters, but I was very excited to check it out, just based on the word of mouth. I mean, it's just really, really, really good. And I agree, it is the best Transformers movie I've seen. I don't know if I can give it like a 4 out of 4 rating, though. But I would give it a 3.5. It's the only Transformer movie I would give 3.5 to. And I'm somebody who... I enjoyed Transformers growing up, but that wasn't my obsession. Like Ninja Turtles was my obsession. Batman, X-Men, that was my obsession. But I did watch Transformers, and I enjoyed it. You know, I knew some of the characters' names and stuff. If you were to ask me the details of any episode, you know, I probably couldn't. I could maybe remember moments, but not the plot of, you know, like many episodes at all. But I did enjoy it. I loved hearing Optimus Prime's voice and everything. Enough where when the Michael Bay movie came out, the first one, I enjoyed it fine. It was just cool hearing, you know, there's Optimus Prime, there's his cool voice, there's Bumblebee, you know, there's Megatron, you know, just seeing giant robots fight and that sense of wonder, certainly that was in there. I think maybe that's the Spielberg angle, or it could have been Bay, I don't know. And then just about all of them after it, I've had no interest. I didn't even hate them. They were just so boring and nothing, and I thought you have literally a whole universe to explore, and they don't do it. So this is the opposite. You have this universe, this world, where there are no people. It's entirely Transformers. It's where they come from. And again, this setup, I'll even go as far as to say this script is nothing that new. This is stuff you've seen a million times in a million prequels where two people that are going to be enemies start off as friends, they start off as the losers, and you're going to see how they become, you know, the worst of enemies and how they get here and everything, and they do the ironic best friends forever, all that stuff. All that is there, but it is directed very, very well in a way where you so naturally follow why these people are doing what they're doing. And it just works, I mean, beautifully, where everything that's happening, because you have, again, without going too much into spoilers, you have the guy who's basically Megatron. He always follows the rules. He's someone that really follows and idolizes, you know, the people in charge and everything. We have to have order and everything. And you have Optimus Prime, who is very much, you know, gets in trouble. He's kind of the loose cannon, but he's laid back. He's very, you know, silly and fun-loving, but he breaks all the rules. But they complement each other. So when things happen in this movie where both their worlds are challenged, you understand why Megatron would feel so angry and he would become the rebel, because the world he was following, you know, was not true. I don't think I'm giving way too much with that. That's set up very obviously in the beginning. But then with Optimus, because he was already kind of he was the rule breaker, he could be more adaptable. So he wouldn't go quite as hard. Again, you know, he wants to fight for justice, but he's not super angry. He's not as angry as Megatron is. It's not going to let that totally change who he is for the worse, become this revenge machine. And you see them slowly change over time. And again, everything so naturally feeds into it. And the other side characters are also good. I'm not going to say they're great, but they're good. I always said Michael Clark. No, what's his name? Key and Peele. Is it Michael Key? Yeah, Michael Key. If he had maybe 2 more minutes, I feel like I wouldn't have liked him in this, but his comedy works just okay. I love the fact that this planet transform, like literally, and they can't predict it. I know it sounds silly when Transformers, the planet transforms, duh, but like the way they make it look and the way they show how this world operates and what they don't understand about it just so feeds into how these creatures, these people could transform and why they transform. Anything that lives on this planet, you would be like, well, yeah, this is probably how they would work. Look at this environment. It makes sense. The actors are really, really good. I really thought when I first saw the trailer, I thought that was the original voice of Optimus Prime. He was just changing it a little bit. But yeah, I had no problem believing, was it Chris Hemsworth, I think, who's playing Optimus in this? I had no problem believing, yeah, that's a young Optimus Prime, even though he's very, very different. And that's very tricky to do, because this is a guy that's always telling jokes and being silly, and the comedy's actually not that bad either. But I buy it. I buy this guy is going to be Optimus Prime later. The things that don't work for me, I don't like how the quest gets going. I thought that fell into their lap a little too easily. I don't like there's a threat build up in this. kind of like a secondary threat that you think might be the main threat, and they're really not examined much in this. I really don't like the final way that again, this isn't giving anything away, that Megatron turns. Because Megatron and Optimus Prime are going to be, enemies. It's going to happen. But the way he turns does not make sense. They needed one more scene to happen in order for it to make sense. But the big moment where the choir goes, oh, like, oh my God, he's changed. And like, no, that didn't come together. You really needed something else to happen in between there. As my brother pointed out, it didn't even make sense. He says this line, it's like, well, wait a minute, the opposite was going on. That doesn't add up. So those little things do add up, but again, not to a point where it ruins anything by any means. Like I said, it's still pretty close to a 4-star movie. It'd be a 3.5 for me, but yeah, I really enjoy it. If you're a Transformers fan, it's absolutely required viewing. If you're a fan in passing, kind of like I am, it's still worth checking out. I think you'll enjoy it. KAOS, this one will be quick. It's a good show. I like Greek mythology. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on it. I always remember the stories more than I remember the characters, particularly the characters' names. So when I'm watching this, because whenever the story would kind of start, I'm like, oh, okay, I remember this. I know what this is from. I know what this is supposed to be. But then, like, my wife was watching with me and being like, so who's that character? What's that character? I'm like, I don't remember. I remember scenarios, which I feel like is what most people take from Greek mythology. I mean, well, like 90% of the stories we tell nowadays are probably from Greek mythology. So I definitely remember the stories more than I remember the people. And I said, and even then, I feel like more the people's names. But with that said, some of the personalities in this are so good, especially Jeff Goldblum as Zeus. I'm sure people are singing his praises, but that was why I'm so curious what I would have thought of him in Wicked if I did not see KAOS, because he's fine in Wicked, but I'm like, man, he's not great, because he was great in KAOS, and I kind of felt like that's what he should have been a little bit in Wicked, even though I know it's just part one, but I'm like, nah, man, I think seeing that show kind of ruined his performance. Not ruined it, because it was still good, but did take me out of it a little bit. And all the actors are really good and they have a really fun... they do a really good job showing what this world of the gods is like, showing them more as like celebrities and, kind of tacky celebrities on top of that, but also some just want to be artists who are the true artists, who are some that are just misled artists, who are some that are absolute monsters, who are some that are in between. They do a really good job showing that with these people, and you can look at them and associate, oh yeah, you're right, that is what Zeus is like, even though he might be wearing like a leopard skin silk robe or something like that, walking around a mansion or something. Like, they still connect. It's a really, really smart idea. It sucks they're not going to have a season 2. I don't know. I mean, maybe the numbers just aren't there. I don't know, but man, it has a fan base, and I would love to see a season 2 if, like, I don't know, somewhere down the line, like maybe they'll come back and they'll be like, yeah, there's enough of a fan base, let's do it. Because this is one of those shows where I feel like, the same thing with Transformers 1, because I know I didn't do too great box office wise, I feel like you don't need this crazy a budget. You can cut back on stuff. Again, kind of like what Arcane Season 2 did. I think you just have to be clever with it. So I think both Transformers 1 and KAOS deserve another go. I think they deserve a sequel, and I think they can really come up with something really, really good, even if they cut down the budget on that. Again, Arcane show, you can do it. I think the show can do it too. If I talk more about it, I think it'll kind of be going into spoilers, because they do change some things up from the stories. But it's very, very good. Watch it just so we can get a season 2, man, at some point. Yeah, Longlegs came out last year too, didn't it? I'm surprised I didn't talk about this one before, because I did see it. I think I was just busy shooting other stuff, or maybe the fatigue hit me. I don't know, but I did like this movie. I didn't quite fall in love with it like I think a lot of other people did, but there are moments I fell in love with, certainly. I think a lot of it's just around Nicolas Cage. Big shock. But he is really back in form here. He is both doing the over-the-top, screaming, crazy, wild, laughing stuff, but he is also legitimately terrifying in this, and it's a wonderful combination, and it's a great movie to watch with an audience because you can tell they don't know if they're supposed to laugh or be scared, either or both. And it's just great hearing those reactions from everybody whenever he's on screen. And he is just giving it his all. This director knows how to use his Nicolas Cage, so good on you, man. The main character is also very, very interesting. I feel like this so easily could have been like a boring run-of-the-mill character that we've seen a million times. Just someone that's like, just sees things a little differently, is trying to get a read, but she's a little awkward and stuff like that. But she plays it so well, and she's also written pretty well for the most part. That I thought I followed it all. Like I said, for the most part, her journey very, very well, and I was definitely, suspense for the character. It's one of those movies where, again, without going too much into spoilers, one of the opening scenes, without giving away too much, again, I was watching with an audience, and the audience, like, gasped at one scene. I mean, not like, like a jump scare or something like that. The whole audience just went, oh! Like that, and like, I don't hear that from an audience. I'll hear like a scream, I'll hear people laugh, I'll hear people kind of talk, oh, do you see the blah, blah, blah. That's all great too. I'm not against all that, but I do not hear an entire audience gasp at a certain moment. And it was really impressive to see that. And it wasn't even that early. And no, it was very early in the film. It wasn't that late into the film at all. Like maybe the first 10, 15 minutes, something like that. Which even saying that is probably giving it away a little bit. But yes, there are moments where it can get that reaction, which is great. I have to see it again, though, because there are some moments where I don't think I quite followed what was going on. I was like, wait, did that character do this? Why would this character go there? Why did this character just pass out at this moment? All sorts of moments like that. Sorry, just got a little alarm here. But yeah, it's a good movie. I think I gotta see it one more time to give it like a rating. Because right now, again, I'll give it 3.5. That seems to be my favorite. 3.5. That seems to be my favorite rating today. But yeah, I think I gotta see it again, because I already had a friend of mine say, well, no, this was going on this scene, and that was happening here, and I was like, oh, so there are some moments where I want to go back and see it again, but there's just one or two bits where I'm like, well, why would this character invite someone in and just hang with my kid, kind of thing, even though, like, she doesn't really know anybody that well, but maybe that's the idea, is to open her up more and stuff. I don't know. It's a film I gotta check out one more time to give like a solid, to get my solid thoughts on it. But yeah, I did really enjoy it. And finally, Creature Commandos. This is James Gunn's latest DC show. And I literally just got done watching it today, finishing the whole thing. And it's actually very easy to review. There's something I really love in it, and there's something I'm very meh about. I love the backstories. Almost every single backstory in this is great. They do it kind of like Lost, where they'll have the main story going, but then they'll have the backstories of each character, because you'll just kind of be thrown into this scenario with these monster creatures, and then every episode focuses on a different person to tell their backstory for. And the backstories really were, they really are like classic monster stories, which is great. There's two I didn't really get into in terms of the backstory. Well, one is the Weasel, who I like in the main story. I actually like his main story more. And the other, I'm forgetting her name, the fish lady in it, which again isn't bad, but she has too much of a connection to the Weasel backstory. Because with the Weasel backstory, as soon as they say what he did, why he's imprisoned and everything, I'm like, that's not gonna be it. It's gonna be a misunderstanding. It's so obvious, yet the backstory is playing it like, whoa, but you didn't see this coming. Yeah, we did. And the fish lady doesn't quite have that exactly, but it's another misunderstanding that leads to, this tragedy. And I'm just like, we literally just saw this with this Weasel character. Why are we? It's already not a great trope. It's so forced in movies, so I didn't care for that. But what I didn't get into, even though it's fine, I acknowledge it's fine, is the main story. The main story itself I feel like it's already trying to be a little predictable. Like, it's literally them protecting a princess who wears a pink dress and lives in a castle, So, I think they already know they're putting a little bit of a spin on this classic goofy story. But it's just, I don't want to say run-of-the-mill, because they try to have these surprises in there that aren't bad, but I could see them coming. And if I was more invested in the characters in this world, particularly how their backstories were affecting them in modern day, I think I would get more into it. Except for the Frankenstein monster. He was the only one where when he would show up, I'd be like, okay, this guy's fascinating because he's a terrible person. Like he's kind of like a mix between this incredibly smart intellectual and a angry, sex-hungry toddler, like just a little brat who just wants nothing but, his bride pretty much, and will kill whoever he wants, but he speaks very eloquently. Yes, very sophisticated. In some respects, kind of like the Frankenstein monster, if you've ever read the original story. You could kind of see him. I don't know if he quite became like, a sex-hungry brute. I don't remember that part. But you could also see if he lived for years and years and years, he might become this. Like in some ways he's very adult, in other ways he's just a dumb little kid, or like a Dubro kind of thing, like a terrible abusive Dubro kind of thing. So I liked that, even though I think he was meant to not be likable, but he was very fascinating at how unlikable he was. And so I had these two things going on where I had a story that was okay, the main story, but nothing to really write home about. And then these really great backstories. And then I got to the last episode, and I couldn't believe it was the last episode, because I'm like, well, no, there has to be more than that. Surely there has to be more than that. And I looked and I said, nope, that's it, 7 episodes. I just went, that was so disappointingly empty. And I don't think it was meant to be. It's almost comically empty, and I don't think it's meant to be. I think he's trying to combine, like, what he did with Peacemaker with, like, what he did with, I think it's either Super or The Super, I can't remember, but Super, I think, is, like, one of the great, in a weird, bizarre way, like, great alternative superhero movies. Like, it's actually maybe one of the best things he's ever done, because he could balance these two things, this harsh, terrible, mean reality with this weird world of wanting to be a superhero, but sometimes for the wrong reasons, or maybe for the right reasons. You don't know. It's very ambiguous. And yeah, there it worked. I think he's trying to combine, like, I don't know, like I said Peacemaker, but I think it's more like Guardians, maybe, Guardians of the Galaxy with Super, and I didn't think they went together, at least not for the ending. Which, like I said, the setup is really good. It's the first time I felt like, wow, the backstories are really leading into what these people are about and how it's affecting their choices in the current story, in the present day. But it just didn't amount to anything that felt like, okay, we're done. This is a climax. This is, we found out something. We learned something. This was heavy. This is deep. We're going to let this sit with you kind of thing. Like, even Super, for as empty as it could be, or as vague it could be, like, what are you supposed to take out of this? You did think afterwards. You're like, wait, who was the good guy in this? Was there any good guys in this? Well, what was I supposed to take out of this? Like, it really made you think. Where in this one, I just left super empty and not interested. Like, some characters that really made a big impact are just kind of gone, and that's like, well, let's start the next team. And it just feels so blasé and empty, and I don't think it's supposed to. Maybe something got cut. Maybe there was supposed to be another episode and something got cut. I don't know. But I will say this, with James Gunn, I'm feeling a little bit too much of that formula, the James Gunn formula, kind of like how people would talk about the Joss Whedon formula. It was great at first, but then it's kind of getting old. I'm almost at that point with James Gunn, which is why I get a little concerned about him doing, like, Superman and heading the DCU and stuff like that. But maybe he'll be a really good producer. I don't know. This, I will say, did still have some life in it. The backstories particularly. I like the fact they are focused on monsters, because these are very classic monster backstories with kind of a new spin on it. So this is, on the one hand, it gave me sort of new life to James Gunn. I said, okay, so maybe there is something here. Because I remember it started off kind of lame, and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be any good. But it picked up when you got more of the backstories. But at the same time, there's still a fair amount of problems in there that I don't know how to fix, because a lot of them are just kind of classic tropes nowadays, but James Gunn feels better than these tropes, and I think maybe he just needs more time with them. I don't know. Maybe a movie does make sense to do, or something to change stuff up, like going to DC and doing something like Superman. You wouldn't think he would do a good Superman movie. That's why it might be interesting for him to do it. So I don't know. I'm still open to. I'm rooting for him because I do like a lot of what he's done. I definitely like the majority of it, and I know he can be great. I want that great in there again. And there's, instead of drops of great, I want something to be entirely great again. You know, like the Super. So yeah. I do recommend it. I think it's far from perfect, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. A lot of gore, a lot of comedy, a lot of good kills, great backstories, fun characters, and stuff like that. So if you watch the preview and you said, it might be interesting, I think you'll enjoy it enough. So, yep, that's about it. I gotta put dinner in the oven. That's why my phone went off there. So it's probably really late now. But yeah, thank you so much. We got, I took a week off. Now I'm coming back here, so obviously more videos are coming up, more NCs and all that stuff, so keep an eye out for that, and I will see you next time. Take care.